So I'm Rebecca, I'm from the University of Southampton, and today I'm going to be talking about the importance of values in shaping how people use energy and their energy saving. And I'm going to be drawing on interview data from the project that I've been working on at Southampton. Maybe, hopefully quite neatly, I'm going to be picking up on a point that was raised before lunch, and that's about money and the framing of community intervention. So how do groups frame it, and what values do people then kind of talk about when they talk about their energy saving? So I was looking through my notes just now, and I noticed I haven't actually made what my main point is clearly anywhere in them, I don't think. So just to ruin the surprise of what the talk's about, our main finding that we think we're seeing, this is still quite early in terms of the data analysis, is that basically, to put it quite crudely, people that say that they're saving energy to save money seem to actually do less in terms of energy saving and in less areas of their lives than people who say they're saving energy because of climate change or the environment. For those people, they seem to do more to save energy in their home, but also outside of their home in terms of travel and food consumption and stuff. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, is what I'm going to be talking around. And the second thing
Could you stand a bit closer to
Oh, sorry. Sorry. And the second thing to say before I go in properly is that I'm not suggesting that there's a causal relationship between people's values and their behaviour. It's more complex than that. So I'm not saying because they have these values, they do this. There's far more interaction going on than that simple kind of linear thing. Okay, so values. This is roughly what I mean by values. I'm a sociologist, so it might differ slightly from, say, how an economist or a psychologist would understand values. So basically, values they're social in nature, so if you like, they're a reflection of wider society. They're not things that spontaneously kind of spring from people's chests or minds. Okay, so this is our project, the role of community-based initiatives in energy saving. And I hope, is that very visible? I'm not really sure whether it's not, is it?
Very poor contrast of colours. I made a comment on my notes that this morning's wheel was a
Not
very
great.
poor contrast.
It looks beautiful on my screen in my office, but obviously not so great here. No, basically, the question, our central question, is what role do community-based initiatives play in reducing energy demand? So what we're looking at as a project is whether community groups work in their aim of getting people to use less energy at home. So to do that, we've got two streams to the research. We've got our field experiment, which is working alongside engineers as well as social scientists. And there we have two communities in the south of England, so two small towns, really. And in both of those, we have roughly 100 houses in each community. And in both of those, we have done cavity wall and loft insulation where needed in our houses. And we've also fitted them with energy monitors. So it means we're constantly recording their electricity and gas use. And it is pretty much, it's every second we get data, so we have huge amounts of data on it. In addition to the energy data collection, we also use regular surveys to find out more about people's travel behaviour, their eating behaviour, their food consumption, and things like that, and also the household makeup, how that changes or if it changes over time. And we've also done interviews with them as well, qualitative interviews. The difference between the groups is that with our experimental group, they've also got engagement with a local green community group. And that engagement takes form, kind of the bare minimum is there's a yearly meeting that all the households in the experimental group have to go to, where the university and the community group put on a night where we talk about all things energy, really. There's also other events. We've had talks on climate change. There's kind of community green days, like Saturdays, where there's lots of stalls and stuff like that. And there's an energy user group where households can come together and talk about their energy use in more detail with each other. So that's kind of a flavour of the things that have been going on. The second stream, the comparative research, we've talked to 23 groups across the country, and the groups have been a mixture of like transition towns, greening groups, specialist energy groups, fuel poverty groups, So we talked to 23 of those. We did 33 interviews in total with organisers, with kind of key players of those groups. And then we narrowed that down to 8 groups, which we've worked in more detail with. So we've done surveys and interviews with kind of members of those groups. And by members, we mean anybody from somebody who's fairly heavily involved, say like they're a treasurer or they sit on the committee, to somebody who might just be on the mailing list and get emails and that's it. So it's quite a wide variety of people we've spoken to. And we've done about 60 interviews in total there. So I'm going to be drawing on data from both the organiser interviews and the member interviews now. So that's kind of the project in a nutshell. And I'm going to move on to some of the early findings we found. So first of all, looking at interviews with organisers, one of the questions we were quite interested to ask people is how they frame their activity. So how do these groups go about trying to engage people? What message do they use to try and encourage people to become involved with the various activities that they run? And I love this picture. I love it when it's so clear. Here we can see 82% of the groups we spoke to framed what they did in terms of encouraging people to save money. So their message was save energy to save yourself money. And it's worth pointing out at the bottom there, if people can read that behind the chairs, there's a quote from one of the organisers we spoke to, Tom, and he said, "We decided to go with saving money. I guess in order of priority, saving money, go green, reduce your emissions in that order." So groups would usually have more than one. It wasn't solely saving money, but that would be the one that they gave priority to, or that's the one they thought would engage the most people. And then we had other ones like the dual focus there. They were groups where they couldn't separate saving money and saving carbon, so that was done very much as a package. And the other one I think is quite interesting, is that 36% of the groups, these are all kind of green groups, or nominally groups interested in the environment and energy, and 36% of them actually avoided ever mentioning climate change or carbon when they were talking to people, because they really felt that this would completely alienate people and actually put a lot of people off wanting to have anything to do with them. So there's this obviously quite a big focus on money saving as the way to engage people, and that's not really surprising. There was a report that was done in 2010 by a guy called Tom Crompton, who was working with WWF. And in that report, they say that there is this quite widespread assumption that people are going to be apathetic or even antagonistic to problems like climate change, problems they call bigger than self problems, unless these issues are recast in terms of kind of people's immediate financial interest. So this is kind of the message that's out there of how to engage people, is to go for their pocket. And as I think we might see in a minute, that might work in some circumstances, but it might not always be the best way to actually engage people if you're interested in looking at energy use in terms of things like climate change. So, moving on to the interview with the members of these groups. So things here we were interested in talking about is firstly what people did to save energy, why they saved energy, and how they explained why they saved energy, and then what effect did this have on their use and their wider energy use. So there were 3 main reasons that people tended to give for why they saved energy. That was saving money, climate change, and what I've called environmentalism, which I've quite crudely bunged a load of stuff under that. So that's the things like avoiding waste, pollution, biodiversity, and as you can see in the quote there, kind of sentiments around the planet, saving the planet. There are also other things like intergenerational justice, like doing things for your kids or grandchildren, but these are the main 3 ones that came out from the data. So I'm going to look at these in a little bit more detail by looking at some case studies, starting with energy use in the home. So here we have Judith and David, and Jane and Jeff. David and Judith reported that they saved energy because of concerns about climate change, global warming and waste. And here, with both these cases, I was talking to them about energy saving. In this case, turning things off standby. So this is part of the interview where we're saying, what do you do to save energy? I turn things off standby. And with Judith and David, Judith, standby, we switch the telly off when we go to bed. I think what's left on is the recorder. David said, yes, in case we've got something to record. But I deliberately have them set up double. That white multi-plug there isn't for the video recorder, so we switch that off at the plug. And so the telly and the Virgin box goes off and we can leave the video recorder on. And this might seem like a really tiny, quite insignificant thing. They've got their thing set up so they can turn one thing off but not the other. So what? But actually I think you can see here how they're actually starting to kind of rearrange their home and what they do in it and how they live in it. Through things like they'd actually moved the furniture in their sitting room around so they could do this. So they've rearranged how it was set out spatially and stuff. And through using technology like extension leads so they can have more control over their energy use. So in a way, they've kind of adopted kind of these new pro-environmental practices or behaviours in line with their beliefs and values. And that's in contrast to Jane and Jeff. And for them, energy saving was just about saving money. They were very clear from that. It was just about the financial savings they can make. And this meant that although they adopted some behaviours, like they had a wood-burning stove, they put a jumper on instead of turning the heating up, they had energy-saving light bulbs, their motivation to save money actually kind of acted as a barrier for them to do more, to turn their things off standby in this case. So you've got, again, talking about standby, and Jeff saying, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things plugged in there. And I'm looking at the telly and the video and the PV recorder, which is probably the majority of it. And Jane's like, well, we can't do anything about it anyway, whatever it takes. And further on in the interview, they actually said that they have an energy monitor, and they'd use that to find out how much things cost them on standby, so how much energy used and how much that cost. And they decided that actually they could afford to leave this stuff on standby. It wasn't costing them enough to bother turning it off. So I thought that was quite interesting, and it's quite a good contrast to the other two, where they kind of did as much as they could to really lower their energy use as much as possible. So the second look at quotes is kind of what's called further afield. So this is looking at people's travel in particular and their energy. And at the top there, we've got Jeff and Jane again. And when I spoke to them, they'd recently come back from a trip to South America. And I was asking them, like, what more do you think you could do to save energy? And Jeff's like, well, if we really wanted to, we wouldn't go on such energy-intensive holidays, but we do. I think we could try and economise, but we don't want to wear too hairy a shirt. Within reason, we'll save money, but we don't want to become mugs. And we've got Natalie here, and similarly to Jane and Jeff, for her, it was the financial motivation that kind of informed what they did to save energy. And she's here talking about, she got her new car, and it's got a, where are we? An Eco Pro button to save petrol, basically, save diesel in this case. And she's quite careful about her speed. She tries to keep it to 50, but it's mainly a money-saving thing rather than trying to save energy. And in terms of travel, we'll still fly if we can. We tend to go to Europe, or we go to the Caribbean. If we knew how it used a lot of energy, we'd still go to the Caribbean. It wouldn't stop us. So that's, again, in contrast to, we've got Steve here, and he was one of the more extreme cases I looked at. His house, his energy use was incredibly low in his house. He never used his heating, and I was there in the winter, and his house was absolutely freezing, but he somehow managed to live like that. It was freezing. He had solar panels, and he had everything on a timer, so he'd like charge up rechargeable batteries through his PV to then use to watch telly in the evening, so he wasn't taking from the grid. Like, it was amazing, actually, and really complex what he'd done to save energy. So he is an extreme case. But for him, his energy saving, he said, is about the environmental side of it. There's wanting a better future for my children, and he said there is the money saving aspect of it as well. It's all of them, really. It makes you feel good. It makes me feel good. And with him here talking, he's saying it's about knowing the value of things, not just the price. He doesn't fly anymore. He would if he had to, but he's chosen not to. He tries to minimise his car journeys through car lift sharing and combining trips. and also with food, which I thought was quite interesting. He's nearly self-sufficient in vegetables, but actually he doesn't enjoy growing vegetables at all. He's not green-fingered. He finds it a bit of a pain, but he thinks it's a good thing to do. So, with all these cases, even though they're involved in local green groups, all of these people are part of local green groups, and they want to be part of research on energy saving. It seems the priority they give to financial considerations over environmental ones, or vice versa, makes the changes that they're willing to make to their lifestyles actually quite different. So we can see those who do it for environmental reasons are making quite profound changes, in some cases, to their lifestyles compared to those who are making kind of minimal changes just to save money without really thinking through the energy that they're saving. So, I think we can see here, hopefully the values are interesting, or the values that underlie people's energy saving. They're not just interesting in themselves, but in the role they play in people's lifestyles more widely. And you can see how they kind of radiate across people's lives, possibly stopping some practices and activities, such as flying, or at least making people reflect on others and reordering, or not in the case of Jeff and Jane, the ways in which they use energy. And I think the values implicit within people's energy behaviours are really important, it seems, from an environmental perspective. So whilst two people can be involved in doing the same thing, normally saving energy, the values associated with them may differ considerably, with quite profound, it seems, knock-on consequences to actually the amount of energy they save and the areas of life in which they engage in energy saving. I'll skip through those ones. And what does this mean? What could this mean for community groups and other people that are trying to engage people around energy saving? Well, I think firstly that it seems that values matter. The message that you give people does make a difference. But I think it depends on the goals of what you're trying to do. I think possibly if you were interested in, fuel poverty, or just getting people to install solar panels and that was it as a group, then maybe going for the message that do it for financial reasons, that's fine, that might work for that. But if you're concerned with things like climate change and the environment in terms of energy saving, then maybe thinking more carefully about the kind of messages that you're giving people and the kind of buttons that you're pushing for them maybe needs to be given some more consideration, possibly. That's it.